Meg, if you would, please call the roll.
Ms. Austin.
Present.
Mr. Castiglione. Mr. Hirsch is not here. Mr. Cater.
Present.
Mr. Collegian.
Present.
Mr. Moore is not here. Mr. Mortimer.
Present.
Mr. Sadi is absent. And Mr. Zaharidis.
Present.
And Chairman Quish.
I am here. We will begin with new business, and the public hearings will be reordered. And what is number 5 on the agenda will switch to first position. But the first order of business will be 781 East Broadway, Zone R5 petition of Thomas Lynch, Esquire, for a coastal area site plan review to construct a single-family dwelling in the VE13, AE13 coastal AE zone map 022, block 474, parcel 34, of which Kenneth Constant is the owner. Applicant has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch, and I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbicki, and Boynton, and my office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. And I'm here tonight with my client, Ken Constant, who's driven down from New York for tonight's meeting. This is basically the last step in the administrative approval process for Ken and his wife, Carol, to construct a new residence on the property located at 781 East Broadway. The family has owned the property for nearly 60 years. Carol's mom still resides in the property. It was used as a summer cottage, as many of the properties along East Broadway, were and have been done over the years. But the family now is in a position where they want to make this more of a permanent residence, and the plans that have been submitted to you for review reflect that. The property is located in zone classification R5. The current structure on the property was built in 1915. It consists of some 810 square feet, 5 rooms, again, your typical beach cottage with a detached garage. It's a very small lot in the R5 zone. It's some 4,900 square feet, so it is a legal non-conforming lot. And I appeared before the Zoning Board of Appeals back in October of 2020 to obtain a number of variances for this residence. The side yard was already non-conforming, so with the reconstruction of the new house and the expansion of the house, the side yard necessitated a variance from the 10 feet required to 1.8 feet as provided. But at the same token, we made the house more conforming as it relates to the setback from East Broadway. The house and the garage literally sat on the street line of East Broadway in its current state, so it's going to be demolished and the house is going to be moved back to conform with the minimum 10-foot setback that's required in zone classification R5. So just going to the plans, Joe, if I could have you scroll. That's the survey showing the existing conditions in the proposed house. If we can go to the floor plans. With me here tonight also is Joe Rousseau, who designed this beautiful house. Joe has appeared with me many times before the board, and when we conclude our presentation, if there's any questions, he can address them as it relates to the building and the structure itself. But what's proposed here is a house that's approximately 17 by 60 feet. It's going to have 3 levels of living space. The total square footage of the house will be approximately 2,800 square feet. The house is going to have a elevator to service it because of the height from the or the distance from the lower level tandem garage up to the 3rd level of living space. So Joe designed the house with an elevator. The first floor plans, typical for a shorefront home, it's an open floor plan with a living room, open kitchen dining area, and a family room on the water side. And off of the sliders from that room will be a deck overlooking Long Island Sound. The second floor has a master bedroom, a guest bedroom, laundry, and 2 baths. And the 3rd floor will have 2 bedrooms and 2 baths up there. So there'll be a total of 4 bedrooms in the house, and as I said, some 2,800 square feet. The height of the residence meets our zoning standards. It's been shown on your map as being 34.5 feet from the mean elevation, so that complies with the zoning regulations. The property is located in the coastal AE zone. The first floor elevations conform to that flood zone. The lowest supporting member, per the survey that we've submitted to you, shows a first floor elevation of 16.5, where 15 feet is required in the zone. Joe has also shown plans with FEMA required columns. They currently have wall vents. We've had discussions with Joe Griffith as to the fact that breakaway walls may be required, so there's further discussion on that. It's not part of our plans or presentation to you tonight. We're submitting to you that the building is zoning compliant, and I think both Steve's review, and if Joe has any comments to elaborate on that, Steve Harris reviewed the plans to be zoning compliant with the one question as to the necessity of the vented walls or the breakaway walls. That will be a building code question to be answered prior to the issuance of a building permit. And as I said, the plans were reviewed by David and Steve. Your website, and I'm sure the documents that have been submitted to you indicate the building to be zoning compliant. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. As is typical with these applications, they've gone through staff review extensively with modifications and revisions. There was one last revision that the city engineer had asked for in his review. There was a couple of typos on the CAM application itself that were corrected this morning by Paul Stowell, and also Greg wanted to have an indication on the plans as per the city standards that concrete apron and sidewalk would be required, and the plans were revised to show that. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Joe, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, our administrative summary is as follows. The applicant is proposing to construct a new
Joe, closer to the mic, please. Thank you.
The applicant is proposing to construct a new single-family dwelling of 34.5 feet in height in a VE/AE/coastal AE zone. And that's the lot is in that zone. The house itself is in the coastal AE zone. Revisions required by the city engineer and the state building code requirements for construction in the special flood hazard area will be made to the documents prior to the issuance of a zoning and building permit. The proposed use does not appear to show any adverse impacts on the coastal resources.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'd hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve the petition of Thomas Lynch for a coastal area site plan review to construct a single-family dwelling in the VE-13, AE-13, and coastal AE zone on map 022, block 474, parcel 34, of which Kenneth Constant is the owner.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please, Meg?
Ms. Austin?
With the motion.
Mr. Cassignoli?
Yes.
Mr. Cater?
With the motion.
Mr. Kalijian?
With the motion.
Mr. Mortimer?
With the motion.
Mr. Zaharidis?
With the motion.
And Chairman Quish.
I am also with the motion. Motion passes. Good luck with your project.
Great, thanks so much.
Next order of business is the reordered public hearings. The first one is closed by October 12th, 2022, vote by December 15th, 2022, proposed regulation change 22-4, petition of Kevin Cresadian Esquire for a change to Article 7, Section 7111, 7112, 7113 to change site plan review procedures. The applicant has the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Kersaden. My office is at 3 Lafayette Street here in Milford. Thank you for reordering the agenda. Because the zone text amendment has an impact on Mr. Sulkas's review procedures, and Mr. Sulkas is unable to attend, I thought it better that this be continued until a hearing where Mr. Sulkas can be here and I can be here. I have some comments from the September 6th meeting. The meeting was opened on the hearing was opened on September 6th. It needs to close by October 12th unless I grant the board an extension of time, which I would like to do because I'm not here in October. So I know you only have one meeting in October. I'd like to grant the board a 35-day extension, and that'll bring us through November, and then everyone can be here and comment, and then the board can decide what to do at that point.
Thank you for that. Mr. Griffith, is this something we just can agree with administratively, or do we need a vote?
No, I believe we just do it administratively.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next order of business is a public hearing closed by November 24th, vote by January 28th. 41 Smith Point Road, Zone R75, petition of James Greer, Race Coastal Engineering for a special permit to repair a seawall and remove boat ramp at MAP 3, Block 90, Parcel 11, of which Point Lookout LLC is the owner. The applicant has the floor. If you would state your name and address for the board.
Good afternoon. My name is Jill Pietropalo. I'm with Race Coastal Engineering at 611 Access Road in Stratford, Connecticut. And I'm here representing Point Lookout LLC at 41 Smith Point Road.
I'm sorry, ma'am, could you please spell your last name for me?
Oh, absolutely. Pietropaolo. Thank you. And so I'm here representing Point Lookout LLC. The applicant is proposing to repair a pre-1995 existing concrete seawall, approximately 80 feet in length. The project is property number 1 up there. To the northwest of the property is the Housatonic River. The seawall separates the street and dwelling from the Housatonic River. There's also a concrete boat ramp that can be seen in the aerial photo that extends perpendicular to the wall. The proposed work is including an in-place repair to the existing concrete seawall and the removal of the concrete boat ramp. This project received permits from the Connecticut DEP under a certificate of permission. The repair will be performed by capping the existing seawall with 2 inches of concrete and adding a cap to the wall. The existing top of wall is elevation 5.2, NAVD 88. The applicant is seeking to raise the top of the wall to elevation 5.9, NAVD 88. In addition, approximately 6 3-inch weep holes are proposed in the wall. They'll be placed 12 feet apart. Work to this project was initiated in 2021, but it was paused immediately when DEP issued a notice of noncompliance. The notice of noncompliance has subsequently been resolved, and DEP, as I mentioned earlier, approved the work through a certificate of permission. As part of the certificate of permission to repair the wall, DEP also requested that the concrete boat ramp be removed. The concrete boat ramp extends into the adjacent property. We've received a letter from that adjacent property owner giving us permission to remove the wall. In addition, soil and erosion control measures are proposed for this work. We're proposing to install a silt fence landward of the tidal wetlands. The silt fence will be anchored with sandbags. And that concludes my description of the work. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board at this point? No. Joe, would you give us your overview?
Yes. The applicant is proposing to repair an existing seawall along the Housatonic River and remove the existing boat ramp. Permits were granted by the DEEP on 6/27/22. The work is within 25 feet of the mean high water line, which makes this a special permit. The application is substantially compliant with our zoning regulations.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so if any member of the public would like to speak, please come to the podium. Seeing none, does anyone have an objection to closing the public hearing? Okay, the public hearing is closed. If there's no questions from the board, I'd hear a motion.
I move to approve as presented the petition of James Greer, Race Coastal Engineering, for a special permit to repair seawall and remove boat ramp at map 003, block 90, parcel 11, of which Point Lookout LLC is the owner.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, please call the roll.
Ms. Austin?
With the motion.
Mr. Cassignoli?
Yes.
Mr. Cater?
With the motion.
Mr. Collegian?
With the motion.
Mr. Mortimer?
With the motion.
Mr. Zaharides?
With the motion.
Chairman Quish?
I'm also with motion. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Next order of business is the public hearing closed by November 24th, vote by January 28th, 230 Old Gate Lane, Zone ID, petition of John Schmitz, BL Companies, for a special permit with coastal area site plan review to establish a truck dealership in the former Connecticut Limousine Building at map 79, block 811, parcel 8A, of which 230 Old Gate Lane LLC is the owner. The applicant has the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Jesse Langer of Updike, Kelly and Spellacy. I'm here on behalf of Bridgehaven Ford Truck Sales, Inc., the applicant. With me is Chris Stadler of Gabrielli.
I'm sorry, our sound system isn't that great. Could you really focus on getting close to the mic? Thank you.
Sure. My apologies. With me is Chris Stadler of Gabrielli, who's affiliated with Bridgehaven Ford Truck Sales, and John Schmitz of BL Companies. Gabrielli is a family-owned business operating a commercial truck sales and service business in which they've done so for over 50 years. That they have truck dealerships in the tri-state area as well as through New England. Gabrielli is a proud corporate citizen of Milford. They have an existing dealership located at 401 Old Gate Lane, and they just recently acquired a dealership, the Kenworth dealership, over on 312 Woodmont Road. Gabrielli is pursuing a significant redevelopment of the old Connecticut Limousine Building, the property with one of their state-of-the-art dealerships. The proposal will significantly enhance the existing conditions, including the building, while increasing positive economic activity in Milford. Before the commission is the application for a special permit, CAM review, and compliance with Section 4. I'm going to yield to Mr. Schmitz, but I just want to note that we've provided extensive memoranda reflecting zoning compliance, and Mr. Schmitz will detail the application as well as the compliance with the various regulations. So thank you.
Hi, good evening. For the record, my name is John Schmitz. I'm a civil engineer, project manager with BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut. And I'm going to briefly walk you through the site plan. The slide you see in front of you now is an aerial view of the site. The site is already developed. It's approximately 8.9 acres in total. Approximately 5 acres of the site is currently developed with an existing building and paved areas. On the aerial, you'll see a lot of buses. Subsequent to the Connecticut limousine use, school bus company was parking buses on the site more recently. They've since vacated the site, and the site is now vacant and unoccupied. On this slide, you'll see along the southeastern side of the site is the road. That's Old Gate Lane. We currently have 3 curb cuts on the Old Gate Lane. You'll see the site extends to the back into the tidal marsh. That's the Indian River along the left-hand side, I-95 along the north, and you see East Town Road along the north here, the traffic signal headed to Lowe's. Next to us, immediately adjacent to us on the north is Midas Muffler, and then to the south of us is a existing wine distributor building, and then across the road, directly across Old Gate Lane from us, is a recycling and carting facility. So the proposed site is basically going to reutilize the existing building. We're going to repurpose it and renovate it for use by the Gabriellis. As Attorney Langer mentioned, they currently operate a facility just down the road at 401 Old Gate. This facility will basically be very similar to that in that it will be used for sales, service, and rentals of truck dealership of another brand separate than what's operating currently at 401. As you'll note on the site plan, we're going to be increasing the green space on site. Today, there is not much green space at all in the developed area. It's mostly all paved. So we propose to do a few things, add some intermediate islands, as well as pulling the paved area away from the wetlands. You can see the dark green on the left-hand side here. That's all part of the tidal marsh. The pavement limit today is there's a berm that runs along that area, and we'll be pulling the pavement area away from that approximately 30 feet so that we can construct a water quality swale in that area. One of the things we're trying to do with stormwater is to provide for some water quality. Today, there's no water quality whatsoever on the site, so we'll be providing hydrodynamic separators to address water quality and provide for 80% total suspended solids removals, as well as creating the water quality swale to infiltrate stormwater, again, providing renovation stormwater that's not currently happening today. All stormwater from the site currently discharges into the tidal marsh to the rear, and that will continue to operate in the future. I will flip to one of the next slides, just a quick landscaping, just showing you some of the treatments. We'll be adding trees throughout the parking lot and the landscape islands to the rear, as well as enhancing the streetscape along Old Gate Lane. Currently, the pavement is right up to the sidewalk in front. We'll be providing a 10-foot landscape buffer along the front of the site in accordance with the regulations, and we'll be planting it with street trees and other shrubs. We'll also be renovating the front of the building with a new sidewalk and landscaping along the front of the building. The rear of the building will be used for access. So I mentioned that we'd be using the building for truck service, and we'll be having roll-up doors along the back so that trucks can access the building from the rear. We'll also have a loading dock at the south end of the building as shown here. And as quickly, the floor plan showing the makeup of the proposed building. The right side of the building, basically all bays. Those would be 12 service bays for the vehicles. The army green color here would be for rental area, and to the left for sales. And then to the rear, the grayish blue area is reserved for parts storage and some loading area off the back. So this whole area will be used for parts storage for the service, as well as customers who come in to buy parts. With regards to building elevations, I'll show you the front elevation, which will be facing the street. That's the lower elevation here. The building will obviously be very similar to what's there today, but we'll be renovating it again, painting the block facade on the right. There's currently one roll-up door at the far north end of the building. It's shown here on the right. That'll be replaced. Windows will be replaced and updated as needed. A new roof will be placed on the structure. And then to the left side of the building, where there's a lower roof, we have 2 main entrances, vestibules, one for customer parts and one for customer sales. So the whole facade will be upgraded, and again, landscaping throughout the front of the building. And then lastly, as was mentioned, the site is in the CAM zone, the Coastal Area Management Zone. So we had submitted documents demonstrating the location of the site, completely located within the coastal area management zone. There is a flood zone in the tidal marsh behind the property, but the property is elevated. The building is above the flood zone and is not impacted. We are a developed shorefront area, and other coastal resources include the Indian River in proximity to the site. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, Joe, would you like to give us an overview?
Yeah. The applicant is proposing to reuse the existing former Connecticut limousine site and building for a truck dealership. The existing 43,960 square foot building would be reduced to 40,960 square feet. Front yard setbacks for the parking area as well as the front landscaping areas will be made more conforming than what currently exists. In accordance with the inland wetlands approval, stormwater runoff has been added to the rear of the property where none currently exists. The fire department requires the installation of a new hydrant within 100 feet of the required fire department connection to the site. The overall site is 8.9 acres with 134 parking spaces are provided with a mixture of standard size spaces and oversized spaces to accommodate the trucks. The proposed work is substantially compliant with the zoning regulations, and there are no adverse impacts to the coastal area resources are expected with this project.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so if anybody would like to speak to it, please come, state your name and address for the board. Try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. Thank you. And the microphone.
Yeah. Hello, my name is James Vig. We own 254 Old Gate Lane, which is directly next door to 230 Old Gate Lane. We are in favor of the proposed development. I think it would help beautify the street and remove an eyesore from the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, is there anyone see a reason we should keep the public hearing open? Seeing none, I'd hear a motion. Well, we'll close the public hearing, and then I would hear a motion.
All right, I moved to approve as presented the petition of John Schmitz, BL Companies, for a special permit with coastal area site plan review to establish a truck dealership in the former Connecticut limousine building at map 79, block 811, parcel 8A, of which 230 Old Gate Lane LLC is the owner.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Meg, if you would please call the roll.
Ms. Austin?
With the motion.
Mr. Castagnoli?
Yes.
Mr. Cater?
With the motion.
Mr. Collegian?
With the motion.
Mr. Mortimer?
With the motion.
Mr. Zaharidis?
With the motion.
And Chairman Quish.
I'm with the motion. It'll be a nice improvement to a property that's sort of been kind of blighted for a while, so best of luck.
Thank you very much for your time.
Next order of business is closed by November 24th, 2022, vote by January 28th, 23. Proposed regulation change 22-8, petition of John Nuff Esquire for a change to Article 3, Section 318-2, Corridor Design Development District 3, Bridgeport Avenue Design Corridor District CDD 3. Article 5, Supplementary Regulations, Section 5.1, Parking and Loading Requirements. Applicant has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just lost our engineer because he was on the prior application, so I'm going to talk for a minute and give him. I'm going to give him an opportunity to come back into the room with us. For the record, my name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street, and I'm here tonight on behalf of CDP Milford, LLC, which is the contract purchaser of the property at 589 Bridgeport Avenue. It's a site that we're all intimately familiar with. It's location in the former Kmart, Ocean State Job Lot, Walgreens, Taco Bell, a small strip center, and a considerable amount of vacant space. Other than Taco Bell and Walgreens, the property has fallen into disrepair and neglect with outdated facades, broken pavement, and a lack of landscaping. In short, I think the word that best describes the site is depressing. I think it's also the one site in Milford, more than any other, that as anyone drives by, they take a look at it and say, why don't they do something with that site? Well, the good news is that they are now my clients, and they are proposing a substantial redevelopment of the center. Not only will that redevelopment dramatically improve the property itself, but it will also be a catalyst for further improvements in this area, including Devon. You will recall that in February of this year, the Commission approved our application for a regulation amendment to the CDD3 regulations that would permit multifamily residential buildings subject to very specific criteria. In particular, the amendment that you approved does not allow any standalone multifamily in the zone. It must be located on a lot with a minimum of 15 acres and an existing commercial development. It requires that the commercial corridor along Bridgeport Avenue be maintained. It requires that any application for a multifamily community must be accompanied by an application to redevelop the commercial portion in a manner that complies with your regulation's architectural standards. And the regulation also ensures that the critical commercial assets are enhanced for aesthetic and economic development purposes, and in particular so that we can improve the streetscape along Bridgeport Avenue. In support of that application, we presented to you a number of concept plans and images last winter, and many of the same presenters are back with us tonight to present materials that are largely similar to what you saw last winter. So in sum, we're still showing the same dramatic the commercial buildings, the pylon sign, and the site itself along Bridgeport Avenue. We are still proposing a total unit count of 202 units in the rear of the property, with a minimum set aside of 10% affordable. We're still showing the same ingress and egress along Bridgeport Avenue and Lansdale. We're still showing that the proposed traffic will be the same as we had discussed. The levels of service, the traffic will be excellent. We're still proposing a substantial improvement to stormwater quality. We received 2 separate approvals from the Inland Wetland Commission. Both of those were unanimous approvals. We're still proposing extremely attractive peaked roof multifamily buildings with robust landscaping and a clubhouse community space. And we're still proposing that the multifamily community will be located on its own parcel, which is why you also have a subdivision application before you this evening. There are a few changes from what we showed you last winter, and we'll detail those for you as we go through the presentation. But as I said, there's the same number of units, but the property on which those units will be located has shrunk somewhat, and so that has some resultant changes in the regulations, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. Then also we have received comments from the fire department. We had a good conversation with Deputy Fire Marshal Sudin yesterday. We can address all those, and we're working on tweaking the drive aisle width to satisfy the fire department, and we can bring those changes back to you at your October meeting. I know you're not meeting on October 4th, but we'll be back before you on October 18th. As I said, we have received unanimous approval from the Wetland Commission. We've also received a positive referral from the Police Commission. So we have a fair amount to get through this evening, but we'll be thorough but concise. I'm going to give you the lineup so you know who's going to be addressing what topics. First is going to be John Schmitz, who you just heard from, who is a project manager and civil engineer at BL Companies. He's going to talk about the overall project layout. Our architect for the commercial portion, Tom Scott, who addressed you last time, can't be with us this evening. He is ill, so I'm going to do my best to fill in for him, talk about the architecture on the commercial portion. Wayne Violet from BL Companies, the landscape architect, will talk about landscaping in general, both in terms of the commercial as well as the multifamily portion of the property. Jason Williams, who's a site planner and landscape architect with SLR, will talk about more specifically some of the landscaping and the architecture on the multifamily community. And then Pat Padlow, who is a traffic engineer from BL Companies, and then I'll come back to discuss the changes to the regulations. So there's a lot to get through, but as I noted, I promise I will be concise. So with that, let me turn it over to John Schmitz, who will walk you through the site plan, and then I'll be back in a minute to talk about the elevations.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Again, my name is John Schmitz. I'm a civil engineer project manager with BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut. The plan you see in front of you now is a existing conditions survey of the property. Just to orient you, the Post Road, Bridgeport Avenue is running along the very top of the site, going left to right. Lansdale is running along the left side of the development. On the corner of the intersection there is the Walgreens building. Just to the right of that is Taco Bell. To the right of that is another smaller building, which is Enterprise, that is not part of this parcel. And then to the right of the existing signalized driveway is another small commercial building, which currently contains a liquor store. The rest of the commercial development is a mix of some restaurant uses and Ocean State Job Lot, Dollar Tree, retail uses. The large box you see at the southerly end of the site is the former Kmart building. It's now vacant. There's some other uses on site, space that's vacant as well. You'll note that there is front field parking on the inside of the reverse L, and also some parking in the rear, loading docks as well in the rear. The site is heavily developed today. And then at the very far south end of the site is an area of wetlands that is currently undeveloped. There's 3 access points to the site currently. One is a full access point on Lansdale, and there are 2 access points on the Post Road. One is the signalized intersection just to the left of the existing liquor store, and then there's a right-in, right-out driveway to the Post Road that is between the Walgreens and the Taco Bell. We can flip to the next slide. Again, this is another slide of the existing site, but shows the proposed subdivision line and how we propose to divide the site into 2 separate lots, Lot 1 and 2. Lot 1 will be approximately 9.6 acres, and the remaining Lot 2 will be approximately 10.8 acres. There will be cross easements between the 2 lots so that utilities can be shared, as well as access to all the site driveways. Next slide, please. So this slide is a overall slide showing the overall development, what it will look like in the final condition. I'd just like to go to the next slide and we can show in a little more detail. So Lot 1, which is the northerly part, basically comprises the commercial portion of the site. Walgreens will remain the same. We won't be touching that. Taco Bell, likewise, we won't be touching that. But the remainder of the commercial buildings will be renovated and updated, as well as the site. The driveway will remain where it is today. The existing liquor store building along the front of the site, along the Post Road, will be renovated. A portion of that building will be demolished, taken down, and rebuilt with some new uses. The Ocean State Job Lot building will remain, the Dollar Tree building will remain, and then the space just to the south of that will be some additional restaurant and retail space. Total retail on site will be approximately 63,200 square feet. Total restaurants on site, including the Taco Bell, would be approximately 8,400 square feet. With regard to parking, the entire commercial parcel, including the Walgreens and Taco Bell, will include approximately 510 parking spaces throughout. And again, access will be as is today. We can go to the next slide, please. This is the residential portion, which will be constructed along the southerly portion of the site. It's comprised of 5 38-unit 4-story buildings and 1 12-unit building on the lower left side. And there's 3 other buildings on site. One centrally located is a community building for all of the tenants to be able to use the community building. And there's a pool area behind that building, and then a very small bathhouse restroom building adjacent to that. In In the lower left-hand area, there's also another very small building that will be a garbage disposal building. It'll be self-contained, so all garbage won't be in a dumpster. It'll be inside the building, and residents will be able to bring their garbage to that and have it taken care of there. You'll note there the Lot 2, where the Kelly green color is, that area represents the existing wetland area. We'll be maintaining that area as is and encroaching into it just slightly with the construction of the new buildings. That represents roughly the limits of disturbance today, where Kmart and the drive behind that extends. And while we're talking about that, with regards to stormwater, the site's basically divided up into two areas for stormwater. Currently, all the runoff that is in the wetland area you see here runs down to the south and runs off to, I think it's Milford Point Road, where that water is discharged. That water is separate from the rest of the development. Today, there's no, similar to last site, there's no water quality improvements going on. All of the stormwater that is on site today, actually, you know what, can we go to the next slide? I think we may have an overall view. Yeah, thank you. So the overall site today, for the most part, the water that's collected and not in the wetlands is collected and discharged towards Beaver Brook. There are two main pipes that discharge the site through roughly the same location where the Lansdale driveway is. You can see it on the plan there where it extends across and discharges into Beaver Brook. And all that stormwater that's collected today from the parking lot is just collected and discharged without being renovated, without any stormwater quality improvements. So what we propose to do is a number of things. We're including hydrodynamic separators to provide for, again, the 80% total suspended solids removal. And we're also providing some underground detention systems to retain and infiltrate stormwater. Those are the dark gray boxes you see throughout the site. So we'll have a mix of them on the residential site as well as on the commercial. Those areas will be used to hold the stormwater and infiltrate some of it back into the groundwater. And again, helping to renovate and clean the stormwater before it's discharged. There'll also be hooded outlets on the catch basins to collect any floatables that might be in the stormwater from getting downstream. In addition to that, because of the development, we'll actually be increasing the amount of green space on site by approximately 40,000 square feet. So just under an acre of new green space will be added to the site. And overall, there will be a zero net increase in peak stormwater discharge between the existing and proposed uses. And again, mimicking existing discharge points with the current design. I think we can go to the next slide.
Excuse me, Joe, are we seeing the site plan review before the zone change? And really, if we've already approved this, can we just identify what's different? What are the key points that are different than what we looked at before? This seems to be more like the site plan review, which is the next item. Are you trying to present them both simultaneously, or?
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, what our goal was to present everything simultaneously because obviously we didn't have a special permit application before you last winter. A lot of the materials that we are showing, as I indicated, are similar or identical to what we presented to you, but this is a new hearing, this is a new record. They are applications that are different from just the regulation amendment that we did last winter. So we're just trying to get through these items as succinctly as possible. You know, we do have a zone change application for the southern end of the sites. There was a bit of a miscommunication with regard to that. That's just primarily where the wetland location is, and so we're going to be resubmitting that application, and so we can open that hearing in October as well. So, but we are hearing each of these applications simultaneously. So we have the regulation amendment, the special permit, the site plan, subdivision are all being addressed at the same time.
Thank you for the clarification. And again, it's God, like I understand this. This is the site plan review. There was no site plan in front of us last time.
Exactly.
So I think with regards to stormwater, I've finished with my presentation, but I'll wait till the end for any questions. Thank you.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just confused. I thought I was hearing a zone change, and I'm looking down, and I'm kind of witnessing a site plan review.
Understood. Candidly, when there are those of us who've been living with the project for 18 months or more, and it sort of becomes a part of us, and maybe sometimes, I in particular assume that the board knows as much as I do, which is unfair. So thanks for the question and the opportunity to clarify that. So let's go on. So this is, I'm going to be doing Tom Scott's slides. Again, this is what you saw last winter. This is a redevelopment of the commercial portion of the site up along Bridgeport Avenue that does not involve Walgreens and Taco Bell. So you see a dramatic reduction in the amount of commercial space, particularly where the Kmart was and the extension of the retail building. There's going to be a redevelopment of the small strip center out on Bridgeport Avenue. Sarah, if you can go, not to the next slide, but the one after that shows the comparison. There you go. So this is a comparison of the existing facades to what is proposed. Clearly, these are very dramatic improvements to all the facades. At the very top, this is the view of Ocean State Job Lot as you're standing in the parking lot looking east toward the building. The next one down is the small retail building out by Bridgeport Avenue. On the left is the sort of that horrific green blue mansard roof, and then the changes with cornice, masonry, clapboard type material to dress that up, and then you have a rendering in the third one down, and then also you can see that there is a dramatic improvement to the Pine Line sign as well. And Sarah, if you can just go back to the previous one, and these are the materials, as you can see, masonry, clapboard, a really nice palette of New England that will mix well with the residential development that you'll be hearing about in just a moment. So that's the architecture on the commercial, and our next presenter is Wayne Violet from BL Companies.
Good evening, Wayne Violet, Senior Landscape Architect with BL Companies. Address is 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut. So the goal, why I'm standing in front of you, we're going to take a look down the landscape lane of this particular project. We're going to take a look at overall goals, our intent as we're approaching this particular property. Very unique. We've got multiple uses on this property, and that relates to how we approached it from a landscape overall design intent. I'm going to be focusing a bit on overall intent and code compliance. After I finish my talk, I'm going to be passing the mic over to Jason from the design team. He's going to be taking a look at some of the details relating to the residential component and some of the architecture. So I'm going to be focusing more on the overall and the code compliance. So what you see in front of you is we've seen this overall rendered site plan of the site. So we're actually going to go to the next slide, which zooms in to the north end. So first and foremost, some of the major code compliance areas that we focused on for this particular site, and I'll start with buffers. Buffers. We have on either east and west of the site, we have residential neighbors. That's very important that this particular site complies with the code and provides a very adequate buffer scheme in order to fit well with our neighborhood. We have a minimum 20-foot wide buffer area between our property line and the development, and that meets code. Within that 20-foot wide buffer area, we are proposing a robust to say the least, evergreen screening plan that's shown in the landscape plan. Over 300 evergreen trees are proposed for this site between the commercial and the residential side of the property. The intention of that evergreen screen is to provide a real good complement to what's surrounding with the neighbors and with the residential character around the site. So on the north end here, a very important piece to the buffering is the separation and clear distinction of that commercial zone with the residential property on the southern end. So along the bottom of this particular page, it's kind of shown in a little bit of a black dashed area. We have a entire line of evergreen trees that are proposed to help distinguish that commercial zone of the site and the residential in the rear. As I mentioned, it's a very unique site, multiple uses happening, and it's very important that that residential character in the rear is really held strong. Some of the imagery that we show on this particular exhibit just gives you a little bit of a flavor of some of the species that we are proposing on the site. Whenever we're doing landscape plans, we try to go locally native, locally adaptable. These things are going to intend to last a very long time and really complement the site and the architecture. So we have a collection of shade trees or deciduous trees. We have a collection of evergreen trees to really give you a diverse plant palette that's really going to help complement this particular site. And again, what we're seeing on the screen, this is a plan view of the northern end, the commercial side. We're going to see in a minute the southern side, but we'll stay here for a moment. So we're talking about buffers, but another code compliance section that's very important, and we've met that code and exceeded it, which is our parking area code compliance. Typically, parking area requires interior landscape space, perimeter landscape space, and canopy trees to provide that shade coverage on the parking areas. We've done that in what's shown here in the commercial zone. Current condition of this parking area, unfortunately, does not have nearly enough green space to comply with current code. With this revision, with this application, this commercial space will be brought up to compliance and beyond with this landscape package. So we have, again, a good collection of plant material that we think is going to be well adaptable to the site, is going to add a lot of character, a lot of good species to this particular zone. I want to bring your attention to the left side before we go to the next slide. The left side of the screen on the site plan, that's one of our entrances to the site. Of course, there's multiple entrances along Route 1. Those exist today. The entrance on the left-hand side does exist today, but that's one of the key entrances to access the residential community there. Although you can use the entrances off Route 1, that entrance is very important for multiple uses coming together, accessing the site, and having a bit of wayfinding. So what you'll see in the presentation is there's been a lot of attention at that entry point to provide clear indication of the residential zone and the commercial zone to really enhance that space. So you'll see a little bit more on the details of that particular entry, but that's very important that we have that distinguished, and we think we have that in the plan. If we can go to the next slide, we're going to go to the southern end of the site, and I just want to go back to buffers for a moment. As I mentioned, east and west of the particular site, we have residential neighbors. On the plan here, we show those lines of new landscaping along the edges of the property. It's a collection of multiple different types of evergreen species. Mature heights go from anywhere from 15 to about 40 feet in height. Installed height on the evergreens that are being proposed along the perimeter will start at 7 to 8 feet, and over time we'll get to those mature heights. So again, a great collection of species along the perimeter. Another code compliance section, which I mentioned, is the interior landscaping, and we have that for the residential zone. It's very important for a residential community to have a collection of evergreen canopy, flowering, high visibility areas. We have a lot of that covered here where we have canopy trees distributed throughout the property to really add to the architecture for this particular zone. Flowering trees, you're going to see a bit of detail of some of the high visibility areas. But as it relates to code compliance, we meet parking as it relates to landscaping. We meet the buffer requirement. We meet the perimeter around the parking areas. So we feel this is a code compliant and more landscape plan that respects the neighbors, that respects the site itself with those multiple uses, commercial and residential in the same parcel. So very robust landscape plan. As I mentioned, there's more than 300 trees proposed on this particular parcel, good variety. And then just a couple other comments to note. No landscape is without its maintenance. So irrigation is considered for high visibility areas, especially in the residential zone where we're going to be focusing a lot of that attention with the landscaping. So we want this landscape to be there for a long period of time, so irrigation is considered for those high use zones. We do have along our rear end of the site, and I wanted to mention this because one of our team members brought it up before, we have that wetland system to the south of the site. We are proposing, and we've reviewed with the Wetland Commission this proposal, a native enhancement planting scheme along that rear buffer area. I mention it only to see that there's different layers to the landscape plan to really create a robust and adaptable plan for this particular site. So that's just another added component, not necessarily from code, but from a wetland standpoint, very important to the particular site. So that's a bit of the overall. Again, we can go for a bit, but I'm actually going to pass the mic over to Jason from the design team, who's going to walk through a couple of those detailed areas, and you'll see a little bit more of the flavor of the proposal of this package. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Jason Williams. I'm a principal landscape architect with SLR, formerly Mylone and Mac Broom, 195 Church Street, New Haven, Connecticut. I'm going to go through and show you some new stuff tonight. I'm going to go pretty quick, so hang on for the ride here. So first, the entry into the residential. Really, we're trying to create this feeling and this lifestyle of the residential for tenants that are living there. So in the upper left to the west is the entrance coming off of Lansdale into our development. Next slide. And so main features, as you're coming down south on Lansdale, you make a left into the site. You can see the red square. This is a faux gatehouse signage feature. In the center, we have a planted median, and just to the south of that, we have a landscaped mound with other plantings. So you'd make your left-hand turn in, go underneath the trees, and you see the next red features, which are the gateway, the columns, and the pergola that create that entrance into the site. Heading straight into the site, or leaving the site, you can see we have a bypass road that if you do pull up to the gate, I really need to point to this, but if you were coming in, we have an electric gate, and if you weren't allowed to get into the site, we do have access that gets you back out there. On the western edge, the left-hand side, there's a sidewalk that runs from Lansdale all the way down into the residential development. Midway, coming down into the entrance, as you're passing by the site lighting with banners on it, you can see there's a textured and a colored crosswalk that gets you from the sidewalk on the left over to the dog park and the open pavilion, open-aired pavilion. To the north of that is a large dog park area, and to the south of that is a smaller dog park area with delineated gating so that dogs don't fight pretty much. Along the eastern edge of the dog park, we have a row of evergreen screening that conceals the dog park from the commercial parking lot. Next slide. So now I want to focus in on the center of the residential site, the clubhouse, and what happens in the amenity space around the site. In the center of the site, just behind the clubhouse. Next. So we starting to vision, what does this look like, right? It's summertime, people are outside, they're barbecuing, they're having cocktails. So we wanted to pick up some of these coastal themes, really coming in with this aesthetic, with contrasting textures and colors, and then bringing in some wood as well so that we can really create some naturalization into the space. Next slide. So this is the outdoor amenity space right behind the clubhouse. And typically we would do a 20 by 40 rectangle pool, maybe we do a little angular pool, but for this project we're doing a little something different. We're creating a very organic shaped pool. Why? Because people like to hang out in the pool in groups. And so you can see in all the little nooks and crevices, groups can gather in the pool. And the nooks and crevices of the pool are created by 3 peninsulas. You can see them with stone pavers. Within the stone paving area are shade structures with day beds, cushioned seating. Just to the north of that, we have a big row of upright columnar hornbeam trees to screen the building just above that. Chaise lounges just above the pool area, and then to the right, on the east side, to screen the parking lot, a row of evergreen trees. To the south, we've got a restroom building with a pergola seating below and flowering vines above it. And to the upper left, adjacent to the game room of the clubhouse, we have a pergola that covers an outdoor kitchen with 2 stainless steel barbecue grills and a sink and a very large center island. Coming straight down south, we have another open-air pavilion with a standing seam metal roof and an outdoor pool table. And just below that, a fire pit seating area with cushioned chairs and a wood bench. Dropping down to the very bottom where the fitness room is with big windows looking out, we have a patio and an outdoor yoga space. Next. So we're going to move into architecture now. So this is the clubhouse, which you probably have seen before. Main massing design of this is to create this coastal design, which I think fits in well in Milford. It's flanked on both sides by these gable ends and then a center colonial column. On the left-hand side, upper, is the fitness room, big windows looking out to the pool area. And on the right-hand side, where you see the little wood panel, is a nano wall. So that wall completely opens so that people within the game room are looking out at people at the outdoor kitchen and passing drinks back and forth. And the center, the big, large atrium window, also opens up like garage doors, letting a lot of light into the clubhouse. Materials on this, we do have some stone in some certain areas on the facade, as well as our dormers. Our roof is standing seam metal roof in gray. All the windows are black framed. We have white vinyl board and batten, vertical, and then white vinyl clapboard horizontal. So a lot of different textures, really to give a lot of interest to the clubhouse. Next. So the clubhouse, right, we're creating this lifestyle. I want to walk you through it really quickly. On the bottom is the main entrance to the clubhouse. As you walk in, you're presented with this grand foyer, a large chandelier above. Moving down to your left is our leasing office space, storage area for Amazon, FedEx packaging. If we come back out to the foyer, moving to the right, we've got a large dining area and a small little kitchen. The idea behind this is that you can reserve it for parties if you're having birthday parties. Coming back into the foyer, we move straight up into our grand seating area, our club room. Our large club room with seating, and to the left of that, we move into our game room with billiards and tables. This, again, looks out to the pool area. Just below that, we have another kitchen space to the left. Moving further left to the very end, we've got a golf simulator room. And then moving just below that, we've got a tiered cinema for movie night. Moving to the right side, we've got a large fitness area, a yoga room, women's and men's locker rooms, as well as some office space for those people that don't go to the office anymore and want to work from home. So a lot going on here, very vibrant clubhouse. Next. You've seen this building before. This is our 38-unit building. This building has 22 bedrooms, 22 two-bedrooms, 16 one-bedrooms, and again, mimics some of the architecture of the clubhouse with our central colonial massing, our end gables. This is a 4-story building. It's 55 feet to the mid-roof. It includes an elevator, a gracious, well-appointed lobby and hallways, and 2 stairwells. Picking up on some of the materials of the clubhouse, in white we have PVC panels which are trimmed almost like shadow boxing. Horizontal vinyl siding in blue, the gray vinyl cedar impressions, again picking up that coastal theme, and some stone veneer on the bottom. The dormers have standing seam metal roofs, and the main roof of the entire buildings and all of the buildings is a black-gray asphalt shingle. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last presenter is Pat Pavlo, who's a traffic engineer with BL. And we're going to keep this really short because the levels of service are fine. So, but I just want Pat to just walk you through the traffic report very quickly.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Pat Padlow, and I am licensed PE engineer in the state of Connecticut, as well as professional traffic operational engineer for BL Companies located at 355 Research Parkway in Meriden. As it was mentioned, I'll try to be brief. The purpose of such study is to determine any impacts of the adjacent roadway and any mitigation necessary to minimize these impacts, if any. There were 3 conditions that we looked at: existing conditions, no build condition, meaning future forecasts for year 2023 without the development, and build conditions with the development. The traffic timeframes that we looked at were weekday AM commuter peak period between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., afternoon peak, commuter peak period between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., school dismissal time between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m., and Saturday midday shopping peak period between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. So this is just an outline of the study area. Basically, we looked at US Route 1, Bridgeport Avenue between Lansdale Avenue and Meadows End Road. And we looked at the 3 traffic signals and 2 unsignalized intersections. Next slide. So the data collection efforts were, in March, we collected traffic counts at all those 5 locations. We also looked at an inventory provided by Connecticut DOT. And we looked at the historical information as well as crash data. There were no recorded impacts from COVID-19. Next slide. And as such, we looked at, we had the existing condition approved by Connecticut DOT, and we looked at noble conditions. Next slide. The traffic analysis build conditions looked at the vehicle access from 3 egress and access locations, including Lansdale Avenue, which is unsignalized driveway, Bridgeport Avenue, the right-in, right-out, and last, the signalized intersection between, at Bridgeport Avenue at the very far corner. The projected build conditions were done for 2023. Next slide. So to do this analysis, we utilized a renowned manual that's been around since 1960s. It's the ITE Trip Generation Manual, 11th edition. We've obtained the trip distribution patterns along the roadway for residential development. Next slide. My apologies, you can hardly see the volumes on this, but for the 204 residential units, there are about 78 trips in the morning, another 80 trips in the evening, 82 on Saturday, and about 45 during school dismissal time. Next slide. So to do the analysis, we utilized a software called Synchro 11 that looks at the traffic operational perspective of the roadway and all the 3 signalized intersections and 2 unsignalized intersections in the study area. One takeaway message for the software is it provides you with the level of service and it grades it on the A to F system, where A means good, green, and F means there's a delay congestion associated with that intersection. Next slide. So we just did like a picture diagram where we showed the results. Majority of intersections performed with the level of service A. There are some level of service C, but level of service C essentially means you observe less than a half a minute delay at any given time. Next slide. So there's hardly any impacts associated with this development. The level of service are acceptable between level of service A and C. Few things that we did observe and would like to bring up to your attention is, my apologies, I can't read from the distance. At all the side driveways, just making sure that there is a stop bar and associated signs with the access locations, as well as at side driveway 3 observed that there's a correction to be made in the pavement markings. There should be a lot, currently the driveway has a pavement marking showing exclusive left and exclusive right. It should also allow a through movement into development across the street. We also suggest going back to Connecticut DOT and talking with them about restriping the Lansdale approach to Bridgeport Avenue, only because we've noticed that in the field it performs as two-lane approach instead of one as it's being cited. And last but not least, this is an OSTA certified major traffic generator already, so we have to go back to Connecticut DOT and present these findings regardless. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. All right, so our last thing we need to do is run through the minor changes to the regulation amendments. I'm just going to hand that out. So obviously, this is already part of the record. I just wanted to hand out another copy for everyone's convenience. So this is the regulation amendment that you passed in the winter this is the regulation amendment that you passed in the winter with a few changes that are indicated by bold type, italicized, and then the crossouts are indicated as well. So 318.2.14.1 is identical, as the same, no changes. The first change is to subparagraph number 3, where we increase the density from 17 units per acre to 19 units per acre. Nothing is changing in terms of the proposed number of units. It's only that because of some of our lease requirements with our existing retail tenants, that the retail lot shrunk a bit. And so while no more units are being proposed, and by the way, just to correct Pat, I think she may have said 204. There's 202 units. But so the point is that nothing's changed with regard to the number of units. The only thing that's changed is frankly, the denominator of the size of that multifamily parcel. We had to increase the height from 3 stories to 4 stories, and from 45 feet to 55 feet, again, to put more units in a building. We are also proposing in 6 to change the minimum acreage for the residential from 12 acres to 10 acres. And then the last is number 9, no more than 38 dwelling units in a single multifamily residential building, and the regulation that you passed in the winter was 36 units. So those are the changes that were designed to accommodate the changes in the plan that were militated by our lease requirements with our commercial tenants. So 8:15, so we didn't do so bad, maybe 45 minutes. I hope we didn't belabor this too much. Obviously, the full team is here to answer any questions. We have read David's memo and obviously don't have any issue with that. He did indicate, because this is a subdivision that's in your subdivision regulations, obviously for a typical residential, multiple lot subdivision, either the applicant has to dedicate open space or provide a fee in lieu of that open space. Clearly that's intended for residential subdivisions. You have the ability to waive that requirement, and we'll be making that request, because the way you determine the value is 10% of the value of the parcel prior to the subdivision. Well, clearly, if you're talking about a vacant parcel and you're doing a typical single-family residential subdivision that has, some implications, but not terribly dramatic, it's wildly different in this context, obviously, when you have an ongoing commercial property. So I just want to bring that to your attention. So with that, let me be quiet and entertain any questions that the commission has.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Yes. Attorney Nuff, what kind of requests did you get from your commercial tenants there to affect this residential development?
To maintain the, so they have the ability to control the property, the actual land in front of their building. And so the original plan that we had showed that subdivision line a little bit further north into the site, thereby making the residential multifamily community portion of the site a little bit larger. And then in working with them, they objected, and so it required us to move that proposed property line a little bit further south, sort of making that residential lot a little bit more compact.
Okay, but if you're not changing the number of units, why do you have to change the regulation?
Because the density number. So before we had 202 units on, I think whether it was the number 12 acres. Now we have the same number of units on 10 acres. And so therefore, the ratio of the number of units obviously had to increase.
So they made you squeeze the area down, so you had to increase the density in the residential development.
Yes, again, not by increasing the number of units, just by reducing the size of that residential lot.
Okay, but why do you have to increase the number of units allowed then?
Well, we're not increasing the total number of units. We're only increasing the density. The density is just a factor of the number of units in relation to the size of the parcel. And because the units is staying the same, but the parcel is getting smaller, we have to increase the number of units per acre.
I know, but you're going from, what, 36 to 38?
In one building, yes. So
why do you have to go?
again, it's how the site laid out in terms of how many units could be in one building. Because the buildings previously were, there was one or two more buildings previously, and so now we have to put more units in each of the buildings. And so therefore, the largest building went from a total of 36 units to a total of 38 units.
So
I don't know that that's a factor that's...
So you are increasing the density?
So we're increasing the
density.
density.
Regulation is increasing the density. It's
Yes.
It's not staying the same as before. It's increasing the density, shoving everything into a smaller area, more units on a smaller area.
Well, the same number of units on a smaller area, yes.
Just small, okay, so it's the same number. When you said small number, it's more units to accommodate the building, the new building size.
Exactly, correct.
All right, okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, there's a lot in this proposal. A lot of it, personally speaking, I really can appreciate, but I don't believe we got this package. Did anybody get these drawings?
I did receive them.
You got them?
Yep, and I did, yeah.
Okay, somehow I missed it. It's just a lot to consider. So that's
No,
just a comment.
and we
that's
certainly
all.
understand. I mean, we're trying to draw a fine line of giving the commission, a thorough overview of what we're proposing, understanding that there's a lot to get through, but obviously we don't want to belabor something that we talked about last winter. And
Sure.
We'd be happy to answer any questions. We have a month before our next hearing dates. If you have anything that you want us to address more specifically for next time, we'd love to hear that and come back, with that information. And even if there was something that you think about tomorrow or next week, and you want to let Joe or David know, then we'd be happy to, do whatever it is to make sure that you're comfortable with what we're presenting.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think the project is needed. That property really does need to be developed. So I'm not trying to hold it
Yeah, I
up
don't think we need
negative.
to get it all done tonight. There may be lots that we have to listen to the public hearing. We'll have Joe's overview, and I don't think there was an intention on the applicant's part to have this settled at this point, or was there?
No intention by the applicant. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman? I didn't hear the rest of your comment.
I'm sorry. Was it your intention or hope that we would vote on this tonight?
No. That's why I want to make it clear from the beginning, and for two reasons. One, because of the zone change, and two, because of the fire marshal's comments, and we need to make some changes to the, how those buildings sit, because we need to increase the drive aisle around some of the residential buildings. So we are going to be making some, fairly minor changes. I mean, if you look at this plan right now versus the one that we're going to be showing you in October, my guess is it would be hard to decipher a difference, but there will be a difference in order to respond to the fire marshal.
Great, thank you. Joe, would you like to comment before we open up the public hearing?
Yeah, just to clarify, and John, jump in if I'm misspeaking, but there's another application that's yet to be made regarding this, which would prohibit the board from acting on the special permit and the site plan application. So you've got the reg change that you reviewed. You've also got the change in the district, and that was as John indicated earlier, we did not notice that properly in the newspaper. I believe you sent out notices to the adjoining properties.
Correct.
But it was not noticed in the newspaper, nor do you see it on the agenda. So we've left that off, and I believe it's the intent that all of these applications are left open, the public hearings left open until the next meeting. Is that correct?
Correct. And just so the board understands, the area that we're rezoning is essentially the wetland area, because for some reason this is probably 2004 or so, I think,